Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reviewing the film Inland Empire, directed by David Lynch. If you've seen my review of Mulholland Drive, you'll know that I said that it's one of the greatest films ever made. For me, Inland Empire also falls into this category. I'd seen this film only once before. I did really enjoy it, but for years I've been saying that it's too long, that Lynch got carried away in using a digital camera rather than film as in all his other movies. I've always said that the nightmare sequences went on for too long and frankly got a little bit boring, even tipping into indulgence. I would definitely have put Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway above Inland Empire in my personal ranking of David Lynch films. I've completely changed my view on this. I watched Inland Empire at the end of my 2-week marathon, watching all of David Lynch's films and the 3 seasons of Twin Peaks. Watching so many Lynch films in such a short period isn't really the optimal way to watch his work. I was definitely feeling a bit lynched out by the time I came to see Inland Empire. What happened was really interesting. Watching Lynch every day for 2 weeks did give me a new appreciation of his work, a much better understanding of what he's doing in his films. I ended up finding Inland Empire totally engrossing, terrifying and beautiful at the same time, the ultimate David Lynch experience. Last year when I watched Bertrand Bonello's The Beast, I was totally flabbergasted at the end of this film. I didn't quite know what to do with myself, so I went back in the cinema and watched it a second time. This was the experience that I felt seeing Inland Empire again. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So the next day I watched it again. I can't believe that I thought it was too long. And now I watched it in 2 days. And moreover, absolutely loved it. I do think that it's become my favourite Lynch film, his ultimate work. Inland Empire is not a film that asks to be understood. It asks to be experienced, endured even. At just under 3 hours, shot entirely on digital video and structured like a psychic labyrinth, it's Lynch at his most uncompromising, bloated, absurd and often incomprehensible. However, at the same time, Inland Empire is also paradoxically the most emotionally affecting and spiritually resonant film of his career. At the centre of this epic fragmentation is Laura Dern, giving the performance of a lifetime. Her portrayal of Nikki or Sue or the lost girl, or perhaps all of them, is astonishing in its emotional breadth. There's no clear boundary between performance and possession here. Dern doesn't just play a character, she dissolves into a succession of selves, moving from glamour to grief, terror to transcendence, often within a single scene. The sheer vulnerability she brings to the role is what holds the whole surreal structure together. The film begins and ends with a woman weeping in a darkened room, watching a television. She's Polish, unnamed, isolated. She's become known to fans of the movie as the lost girl. She may be a prostitute, a murder victim or a spirit. She might also be the real subject of the entire film. What we're watching could be her dream, her projection, her reckoning. This is one of many recursive interpretations Lynch invites without ever confirming. What is clear is that her suffering echoes through every layer of the film and her final release. A smile, an embrace. It suggests that amidst the chaos, Lynch allows space for grace. The story, such as it is, centres on Nikki, an actress cast in a cursed production called On High in Blue Tomorrows. The film she's working on is a remake of a project halted after a murder, and Nikki quickly loses her bearings. Scenes bleed into each other. The script seems to become real. One of the most electrifying scenes comes quite early on when Nikki is visited by her Polish neighbour, filmed with a handheld camera in tight, disorienting close-ups. The conversation is chilling in its quietness and simplicity. The neighbour speaks cryptically about a story, one that's already started, and the mood is immediately wrong. But what makes the scene extraordinary is how natural it feels. Unlike the stylised surrealism of Lost Highway or the heightened melodrama of Mulholland Drive, this moment plays like something out of a realist drama. The grainy digital texture, the awkward pauses, the way the camera hovers uncertainly. It feels like a documentary or a verite thriller. For a director who so often builds tension through abstraction, this scene is startling in its directness. It sets the tone not with spectacle but with unease. It's an absolutely brilliant Lynch scene. Another unforgettable moment is when a simple script reading transforms into something raw and disturbing. We realise, as Nikki does, that she no longer knows when she's acting and when she's herself, or if she ever had a self to begin with. Even more unsettling is the moment when Nikki says, almost in horror, "This sounds like dialogue from our script," when in fact it is the script. The realisation that her life is no longer distinguishable from her performance is a chilling, destabilising stroke of genius. Not only terrifying, but a perfect expression of the film's metaphysical horror. I personally find this scene one of the most terrifying that I've ever seen. The film has a very long middle section involving Laura Dern, the prolonged nightmare alternative reality sequence. On first viewing, I remember finding this too slow, even tedious, but this time it felt completely different. It's not conventional cinema, and it's certainly not entertainment in any traditional sense, but every scene drew me in. What had once seemed a bit repetitive now felt like a really carefully curated audiovisual experience, a descent into another psychic register. The texture of sound, image and performance becomes hypnotic if you let go of the need for clarity. Lynch isn't telling a story, he's creating a state, and if you surrender to that state, the film takes you somewhere else entirely, not just deeper into the character's mind, but into a different cinematic reality. This is Lynch's most meta work, films within dreams. Scenes fold back on themselves, characters appear watching themselves on screens. The camera itself becomes a participant, distorting faces, destabilising time, peeling away the boundary between viewer and viewed. There is one point when we're watching a scene and Lynch pulls back to show us a camera and rig and a director yelling "cut." We didn't know we were watching the film within the film, but once this is revealed, even this gesture offers no relief. Nikki doesn't wake up, she doesn't return to some external reality. The fiction is the only reality that she has left. This moment occurs immediately after one of the film's most haunting and emotional sequences. Sue, perhaps Nikki, perhaps someone else, collapses in an alley amongst homeless women. A stranger holds a small lighter before her face, not to light a cigarette, but perhaps to guide her soul. The background hums with something like organ music. The women chat casually about buses and travel plans. Death here is both mundane and sacred. When one says "no more blue tomorrows," it resonates like a quiet prayer. Later, this phrase, also the title of the film within the film, echoes through other fragmented realities. It becomes a kind of spiritual refrain. I think this scene is extraordinary, deeply profound and moving, really emotional. This juxtaposition of the sacred and the banal is the key to the film's strange beauty. Lynch finds angels among the discarded, epiphanies among the homeless, transcendence in a whisper, and yet he never explains. He offers repetition instead of resolution. The line, "look at me and tell me if you've known me before," recurs like a mantra, a desperate plea for recognition in a world where identities melt and reform without warning. We can't grasp the narrative, but we feel its emotional shape. It's as if our subconscious understands something that our intellect never will. What makes Inland Empire so affecting, despite its abstraction, is that it isn't cynical. Beneath the dread and distortion, the film is about liberation. Whether Nikki is an actress lost in her role or a spirit trapped in a cycle of suffering, her journey is one towards release. When the lost girl smiles at the end, having watched Nikki's journey unfold, it feels earned. We don't need to understand the mechanics to feel the grace. Yet Lynch refuses to end the film neatly, even after the powerful alleyway death scene and the meta moment of the director calling cut. It would have been easy, almost too easy, to let the film end there, with the impression of a life or soul passing, a cycle completed. But Lynch resists even this form of closure. Instead, we move into further mystery. The lost girl is reunited with a man and a child in a moment of strange reconciliation, and then the film concludes with a jarring musical number. The women, including Nikki, dance to Nina Simone's Cinnamon in a burst of joy that does feel both earned and bewildering. It's not a catharsis in the traditional sense. It's a rupture in tone, a sudden emotional shift that unsettles as much as it uplifts. It's classic Lynch, reminding us that even after death, even after transcendence, the dream continues, perhaps without end. In the end, Inland Empire may not be a film at all, but a vision of women lost and found, of selves shattered and stitched together through memory, dream and performance. It is quite possibly the most spiritually resonant artwork Lynch has made. And like all spiritual encounters, it resists paraphrase. It simply asks that we sit in the dark and open ourselves to what's on the screen. Inland Empire is probably Lynch's most demanding film to watch. It probably is the most inaccessible of his films. I think that you have to be really tuned in to Lynch's work in order to fully experience it. I don't think I was quite ready for it the first time I saw it. Now I think it's amongst the very best films ever made. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.